welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO at Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, I'm really excited. I get to speak to Kim Scott. She's the author of Radical Candor and Radical Respect. It's a pleasure to have you on, Kim.
Well, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to our conversation. Part of the reason why the book worked is that I really love writing for its own sake, not just to share my legacy as that, but I actually like the writing part, and was actually interested in the thing that really motivated me. Like the reason I left Google and went to Apple was that I realized I really didn't care at all about cost per click. The thing that interested me in my job.
By the way, if you're at Google and you don't care about that, you probably shouldn't be at Google.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think cost per click was taking care of itself, really.
Yeah, right.
It was doing really well. But the thing that motivated me, and I think the reason why I was effective at Google was thinking about how do you build teams, how do you set up structures so that people can do the best work of their lives and build good relationships. So that was the thing that really interested me, and what Apple offered that Google didn't was an opportunity to spend full time thinking about, how do you manage people? So I think it also, the experience spending 2.5 years at Apple just thinking about teaching people how to manage was also really helpful. Like I think most people don't go from leading a team of 7.
But go back to why do you think that? Why did it take off? Because it wasn't like you went after this with $1 billion marketing budget and
no.
Whatever. Like, what was going on either at that moment in time in the business universe, or why did it hit?
Yeah.
Why do you think it hit?
So that was a long-winded way of saying I think part of the reason why it hit is that it's well written. It's a good book.
Okay, good. But I think that's important because there's so many books out for so many reasons that just aren't.
They're not written. Especially well written. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think also I was genuinely interested from the time I started my first management role in 1991. I was genuinely interested in the management part of building a business.
Okay.
And most people aren't. Like I went to business school, and how many classes did I take about managing people? Zero. Nothing. The thing I did learn at business school is that a good 2x2 framework can solve all the world's problems. And I think the 2x2 framework in Radical Candor is part of what struck a nerve. And the 2x2 framework is sort of vertical line is care personally, horizontal line is challenge directly. And when you can do both, it's Radical Candor. And that's really important because I think we so often feel like we have to choose between being effective and being nice, and you don't. You can do both, and I think that's part of why it struck a nerve. It kind of dispelled the nice people finish last myth that is really out there. I think a lot of people hate the idea of becoming a manager because it's like, if you think about all the relationships in our lives, most of them have a positive valence, family relationships, parent-child. Obviously there are bad relationships between parents and children, but mostly they're positive valence. But if you think about the relationship between a boss and their direct report, it's a very negative. Even the word boss, manager, leader, all of those words have negative connotations. And yet all of us have managers, and a lot of us become managers. And that was one of the things I really set out to fix. So I think it hit a nerve also because we've come to a moment in our economy where people are unwilling to pay the asshole tax. They're not willing to work for someone who treats them miserably.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
no, I think that's important because I think, you and I are probably similar age. When we were coming up, it wasn't really an option. Like if you got stuck in the killer job and the boss was a jackass, it just
that was your
sometimes
problem.
actually
had to take it.
They were synonymous. Like the best opportunities came working for toxic people. I'm Really excited about today's episode. I've got Marcus Collins here. He's an award-winning marketer and culture translator with one foot in the world of practice. He's the chief strategy officer at Wyden & Kennedy, small little agency. And then he's also a marketing prof at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. He's got a couple books out. We've got a new one. And before getting into all of the minutia of his bio, I'd rather just talk to him because he's quite unique. So welcome aboard, Marcus.
Thanks for having me, Peter. Good to be here.
What is it about the way that you'd like to market this book or your approach to marketing this book, given that it's your first, right? That's different or unique? Because as you know, marketing books is just not easy.
No. And thing is, what it became for me, it really was like a moment of truth in that I had to approach launching the book like I would launch any product for any client. That's just a very hard thing to do when you are the client. And it was an industry that I didn't understand very well either. I didn't know the publishing world very well. So I had to learn the industry, learn the players, learn the consumer behavior around it, and then design based on the congregation of people I want to interact with. And what I ended up doing is I literally went to market with the book the way that I tell brands to go to market. That is, start with who are you? How do you see the world? What do you believe? What is your own culture?
Yep.
Who are the people who see the world the way you do, right? People who subscribe to the same point of view that you do, and you go preach the gospel. And if you do that, if you activate those people based on the shared conviction that you have.
Yeah. I think there's some brilliance in that a lot of people, when they get a book out, they'll say something like, well, everybody should read this book. And this book applies to everybody. And it's like, okay, great. Problem is you don't have the marketing budget to reach everybody.
That's right.
And it's really, really expensive to be in the conversion business. So step one is, if there's a whole group of people that believe the opposite of what you do, or it's not important, okay, good luck to them, right? Let me find my people. Let me find my tribe that really will lean in hard. Then you don't even have to tell them. They will organically or naturally evangelize and say, oh man, I just picked up this guy Marcus's book. And hey, man, I know you're going to love it because I know we think similarly. And similarly doesn't mean bland, right? Like we have similar perspectives. Our perspectives might be totally out there and bizarro.
That's right.
But we share that
exactly
in that way. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing is that when we approach marketing, going to market in that manner, we find that people don't tell other people because they love you. They tell other people because they love their people. And they end up preaching the gospel about you, evangelizing your behalf as a way of projecting their own identity, not because of who you are, but because of who they are. And people go tell other people about the book as a way to saying like, hey, Pete, like, Peter, you and I know you're going to love this because we always talk about this, or dude, this is right up your alley. And by sharing it with you, you go, Marcus, thanks so much, dude. Like that's exactly what I was looking for. You know me so well.
Well, and there's a piece of that, and I think there's a piece of that if I subscribe to the beliefs in the book, whether I've thought about it that way, and I read the book and go, oh yeah, hallelujah, this guy's on the money, right? When I give that to someone else, I don't have to say, this is what I think. I'm giving them and say, hey, here's a guy that's much smarter than me. He's a prophet Ross, and da-da-da-da-da. Look what he thinks. By the way, happens to be what I think, right? Or I wouldn't give you the book that didn't, right? But it's sort of a weird way of validating my belief system and my worldview.
It becomes a means of social currency. It's like sharing, like telling your friend about a funny movie, because by telling them about a funny movie, it means that you have good taste, right? It means that you know what good humor is, or you know what a good restaurant is, or you have good taste when it comes to travel or whatever we recommend. We recommend these things so that we can strengthen relationships with our people, right? The product, in this case, the book, is just it's just currency by which people exchange to bring each other closer together. And thinking about the book that way, it's a humbling thing to do, because this isn't about you, Marcus. This is about the ideas becoming a way by which people peacock to the world who they are and find people like themselves. So I build the launch in that fashion. Like, who are my people? Who see the world the way I do? Luckily, I had been teaching for roughly 10 years. So I said, I want to reach out to my students, people who take my class, my favorite
already love
students.
you. Right.
Exactly. People who already know the gospel. They already believe it. And perhaps.
But I think you buried the lead there, by the way. Professors do have favorite students.
Yeah, right.
Period. And And if you don't know who they are, it's probably not you. Just saying, right?
I'll reach out to some of my favorites, not all of them. Some of my favorites.
The most favorite.
There you go. There you go.
So if Marcus didn't reach out to you,
and what I know is that I reached out to the ones who not only knew the gospel because they did well in the course,
yes,
but they believed the gospel from the courses that I taught.
Sure.
And they probably tried to institute the thinking in their work since they've taken my class.
So stay there for a minute, because again, this is one of the quirkinesses of marketing a book, if that's a word, which you're marketing the book, but it's sort of only one thing that you're marketing, right? So the book is one place that all these ideas live, right? In an easy thing you can grab for $25, $30, whatever it is. But the reality as a thought leader is when you're marketing a book, on some level, yeah, you care about book sales, but on other levels, there's other things that you want to happen as a result of the book. Maybe they book you to speak, or they hire you as a high-paid consultant or whatever. So it's sort of marketing once removed, right? So
what I find is that the most important part about the book is just scaling the thinking. It's getting the thinking in the hands and the minds of more people.
So where I was going with that, if I were you going through list of my, favorite students, right? They might be more favorite if they happen to be the CMO at a company that looked like one that you might want to do business with, theoretically, than if they were working at an underfunded nonprofit, bless their hearts. But if one of your objectives was to drive your business, then you got to say, these people are in positions that can really be helpful to me. The book is just sort of the first bite of the apple, if you will.
100%.
Today, my guest is Kate Brovary. And Kate is interesting. She is the co-author of a new book. It's never an old book, right? Called Work Different, published by Wiley just recently. And she has been at Mercer for a long time. Her current role is advisory knowledge and insights global leader. So we'll ask what that actually means in English in a moment. But she has an interesting background, and she was previously in a previous life at PDI Ninth House. So she knows the training world, knows sort of all the things that we tend to talk about. So welcome aboard today, Kate. How are you?
It's great to be here with you, Peter.
What I know from my experience is the only thing publishers hate more than a book written by 2 people is a book written by 3 people, right? So now you mentioned it in a positive light of diversity, right? So you had you had, I think you said Germany, you and someone in New York. So talk about sort of what was the impetus to write the book, what that experience been like, and now you're in sort of launch mode.
Yeah, now that I've actually worked with the publisher, I can totally understand why they would say that, and I might actually agree with it. So just because I have a value that you end up landing in a better place because you have diversity of thought doesn't mean that that's the easiest course. I think the reason why you end up in a better place is because you have that
three different people with 3 unique excuses to miss deadlines, which publishers love. So anyway.
And so Kai Anderson, who's in Germany of Transmission, it also, because obviously things take longer than it is, it ended up crashing into him having a 4-month sabbatical. So you can imagine what we were all saying behind his back as well when someone goes out for 4 months. Anyway, he's made it up since, but it was tough. And, so my learning was, one thing I know that Mercer's really good at is we're really good at executing. Mm-hmm. And because we're good at executing, that's sometimes a problem. Because if the more important thing is getting the ideas right, the ideas that linger, the things that you go, look, this is the stuff that we would say when we've had like 2 bottles of wine, but we probably wouldn't say direct to our clients. And we wanted this a book where we came off mute on the things that we thought were fundamentally broken about work that really are going to trip you up if you didn't do it. And in the first version, it had loads of swear words, which my boss, who's in America, all took out. But the book is quite, not aggressive, but it does say the stuff that we probably wouldn't say as a keynote speech. And I think we felt really passionate that we were having these professional conversations on interesting topics like the move to skills-powered organizations and modern reward practices. Mm-hmm. We weren't having the honest conversation with, let's be honest, it doesn't pay to stay. And actually things have shifted and skills are the new currency of work. And my God, what are you going to do all about your job architectures and all the stuff that we supply to you today? Because a lot of that's not going to be relevant in a more agile world. So those are the sort of things that we weren't talking about. And so we were like, let's do it this way. We even don't even have Mercer on the front.
Well, but give me the origin of the book. Was it, who had the idea, and when was it over, how many bottles of wine? And someone said, well, it would be a jolly good idea for us to write a book.
I think a lot of people in our profession might say, hey, we should put some of that down on paper at some point. I know this wasn't this wasn't the start of the book, but I think it was the one that maybe tipped us over. We're in the US and Ilya and I and Kai are waiting for a flight. Then, all the signs, click, 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 comes up, cancel, delay. We're going to be there for about 6 hours. So we do what all good consultants do, get your laptop out. Got to be productive, got to be productive.
Oh, I was going to say hit the bar at the airport, but okay.
I think it was about 11, so it's probably a bit early even for us.
Oh, okay.
And then we start to overhear a conversation, like you do in a cocktail party. And you shouldn't listen in, but it's just too good. And it's obviously someone in the HR function, and they're on the call to someone on the other end, and they're like, I know, we can't hold on. We can bring the young people in because we've got a great brand, we've got great training. But yeah, that's it. They're going to leave after 18 months. Oh, that's what Gen Ys do. They don't want to stay around. Okay, maybe some of it's us because, we don't move them. You have to be in a role for a year before you could. And then they mention their competitor. Yeah, I know they've gone to their direct competitor.
Yeah.
And they said, well, they give them a sign-on bonus. They've even given equity to young people, blah, blah, blah. And then the best bit was it ends by saying, but you know what? I'm not worried about the people who go because I think they're the clever ones. I think they're the bright ones. The ones that stay who don't have the guts to renegotiate or don't think that they can get a job elsewhere. That's what I worry about, that we've now got a business of people that don't think that they can go, even when they can earn a lot more by moving. And that,
but how
the thing is,
to this moment in time, because I think there's always been this issue of if you're at that super elite rock star level, the HRs, the voluntary employees, hey, you know it and I know it. I can go across the street anytime I want. So you're gonna treat me with kid gloves. But that's such a small percentage of the overall population.
I think it is now. And I think that's the thing is there's these ebbs and flows. So at that time, we were like, when do we stop valuing loyalty? And is this actually the businesses we want to do? So we obviously, Mercer, large consulting firms, so we had a look. What's the pay difference between people who switch and people who stay?
Sure.
And at the time, it was a huge difference, particularly in the US. And so that got us talking. And it was a very tiny difference in like Germany, where you've got, more collective bargaining. So that got us on the path saying we sit on enough data to actually say, are these just fables and people griping, or is it a truth? And if it's a truth, how do we fix it? So that's sort of how we went into it. But then you're absolutely right. I mean, coming off the pandemic, people had so many job choices. And we had, what is it in the US, 50 million people quit, I think, in 2022.
Yeah.
So we knew that it's not just pay. We're getting a lot more wrong than that. And Global Talent Trends, which I'm just about to release at the end of February, 1 in 2 people believe that work is still fundamentally broken. Yeah. And 82% feel at risk of burnout, which is higher than it was 2 years ago. So some of the indicators I saw before the pandemic, I mean, they were back down in the 60s, is still there. People still feel exhausted, depleted. And so we've got old world and new world stuff that I think needs fixing.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave a 5-star review at ratethispodcast.com/LTL and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcasts and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcast. And today I'm really excited. I've got a really special guest, Liz Weissman. She's a researcher and executive advisor who teaches leadership to top organizations worldwide. She wrote the New York Times bestsellers, Multipliers, The Multiplier Effect, and the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Rookie Smarts and Impact Player. She's the CEO of the Weissman Group, a leadership research and development firm headquartered in Silicon Valley. And she has worked with Apple, AT&T, Disney, Meta, Google. She's received all the Thinkers 50 awards, and basically in the world of thought leadership is what we technically call a rock star. So welcome aboard, Liz. Thanks for joining us today.
No, happy to be here. I have zero musical talent, so definitely not a rock star, but happy to be here.
Exactly. So you're not announcing the drop of your newest album?
No. Like my nightmares are like I'm on stage with a guitar and I don't know how to play. So I'm an anti-rock star.
You're an anti-rock star. There you go. Cool. So a lot of folks kind of, I don't want to say obsess on the keynote, but stay very much in the keynote space because if you do that well, the money's great, and you don't need to have a whole staff and all that. But in reality, my experience has been that the keynote should be the beginning of a relationship with a client, not the extent of the relationship. If you really want to drive measurable outcomes, if you want them to embrace your ideas, if you want their leaders and managers to practice what it is that you've researched and studied. And that doesn't happen in the form of a keynote. You have to actually think through, what is that suite of products and assessment tools, video-based learning, et cetera? What have you done there to sort of drive stickiness in an enterprise and behavior change at the org level?
Yeah, Peter, to answer your question, is it okay if I like take you back to where I
Sure.
started my careers? So I ran.
We're doing a flashback now. We need like
We're flashing back. So I
flashback.
ran the corporate learning function, and I worked for
Yeah.
a huge global software company. And so part of that was management training and professional development, but a
Yeah.
lot of it was product and technical training. And so when
Yeah.
Oracle launched a new version of the database or a new suite
Yeah.
of tools, it was my job to make sure that every single person in that company was trained on the new product, meaning they knew how to install it, sell it, tune it, support it.
Which
And
probably took priority over people, right? Product probably trumped people in that culture.
this was a software company run by Larry Ellison.
Yeah, that was what I was going.
Yeah, and so I spent almost 2 decades like with this mindset, which is when you have a product, you need everyone ready, like equipped with the tools, the training, the support. And so when I released my first book, it like on release date of my first book, Multipliers, I'm like, okay, well, here's the keynote, here's the workshop, here's the
Right,
assessment.
right.
I wasn't thinking about it from a business and how to produce income. I had this trained into me, which is you don't put something out there into the world without the tools that people need to be successful with it. Like to me, it was
But it's the basis of a far more robust business that's not dependent on, is Liz in the room or in the Zoom today?
oh, absolutely. And it turned out to be like, I think one of the strengths of my work and research and books has not been the books themselves. It's been the ecosystem, the support system
Yeah.
that companies can get training and roll it out. Like multipliers, you could get that from Franklin Covey or our partners BTS. You could take
Yes.
the assessment, the light. Like we've got that whole little universe around it to help people be successful with it, which means it can grow deep roots inside of organizations. But I'm just confessing that this was not business savvy or genius on my part. It's just the way I had been trained to think, to run a large learning.
But it gave you, I think that when you came out on the scene as a thought leader, it gave you a competitive advantage because lots of folks have great ideas and books and they make for a lovely keynote and people can chat about them over the cocktail party. And then, 3 days later, you're like, how was it? Oh, that was kind of cool, like whatever. But when it moves from speaking being maybe the beginning of the journey you're going to take an organization or a team or a functional unit through, it's really, really different. Right. I think it's just really different when they start to use your language and your models and your methods and your frameworks.
Yeah, we've offered a system to organizations that want to deeply implement the ideas. And, it's always, it's my favorite form of feedback. It's not like, oh, hey, you spoke at our company and it was great. Or I read your book and I loved it. That's nice to hear. What I love hearing is people saying, wow, you came and like spoke at our company or we went through your workshop.
Right.
That was like 5, 6 years ago, and we are still talking about it and still
Yeah.
using those ideas. That's what I work for.
Love it. Yeah. And the sustainability of the ideas, because otherwise you get, a lot of ideas, unfortunately, you get the sugar high. Everybody's into it for a little bit and then you crash and then you move on to the next, donut or whatever the case may
I
be.
know, but Peter, let's not forget how great a good sugar high is.
Oh, yeah. No, we love
I'm the
sugar.
daughter of a donut maker, and oh man, I love a
Are you
good donut.
really? Uh-oh.
I am.
Daughter, that sounds like the album cover that you're going to do. Daughter of a donut maker.
Yeah. I hope it
Yeah.
doesn't involve me having to play a guitar.
No. We could probably just do it with Chat GPT or something. But there you
Yeah.
go. Daughter of a donut maker. I like that. So I want to talk a little bit about the publishing landscape. You've written 4 books, 5 books?
4 books, and then 1 book was a second edition, which was as much work. So my mind, I've written 5 books, but
All right, we'll call it 4.5 for technical.
thank you for placating me on the 4.5.
Yeah, we'll give you 4.8, whatever. What's different now about how you go about writing a book? And then I want to talk about the world that is, or the insanity that is the world of publishing.
Well, I'd like to think I'm a little smarter about the process and have kind of a big picture. And so there's some advantages, like I know what it involves. The disadvantage of being a multiple book author is you know how hard it is. And, honestly, I kind of am nostalgic. I really kind of yearn for the days when I didn't know what I was doing. And I just jumped in and, when I had written multipliers, which I think is like sold over 1,000,000 copies or something. It's like it's kind of up there. I had never written anything longer than an email note, maybe like a 3-page report and then, essays in college or what have you, and maybe a
Right.
Christmas letter every year. But I didn't know what I was doing, but I signed a contract saying I had an idea.
Right.
So therefore I needed to write a book. And so I jumped in, like, headlong into this process. And I was the same way with my second book, Working Smart. It's like, you know what? Hey, I really enjoyed that book writing process. Like, I told my publisher, I'm like, I think I loved every step of this publishing process, everything except perhaps the index creation, which, they sub out to do that, but I didn't really love that. But I loved every bit of the research, the writing, the editing, and I said, "I think I might have the bug." And she said, "Oh, no, you've
Right.
got the gene. Like, you're sort of built to
Ah,
do this." And so I jumped into my next book, Working Smart, and then I'm jumping in, and now I'm like, "Oh, slow down." Like, I now know how hard it is.
right.
I know the grind, I know the loneliness, I know the intensity, I know the, like, roller coaster of emotion that goes into the
Sure.
process. So
Sure.
I'm a little slower to do it because it's scarier.
Yeah, so this has been going on for several months. So I'll start with sort of the origin story and then hand it to you to talk about what we did and what we learned and where we're going with it. Anyone interested in downloading the survey, it is available for free. It is the Business Book ROI research study, and you can download it at authorroi.com. So you can just go to that site and download it, and you'll be good to go. So let me give you the quick backstory here. A couple of months ago, my friend Dan Gerstein, who is the founder and CEO at Gotham Ghostwriters, called me up and he said, "Hey, I had a client ask me this question and I've been trying to find the answer to it and I haven't had any luck. I thought you might be able to give me some insight on it." I said, "Sure." So what the client asked him was, wow, okay, it's a significant investment between the ghostwriter and publishing and opportunity costs, et cetera, to write a nonfiction business book. Has anybody done any research on the ROI of that? So Dan snooped around, found nothing. I said, that is a really good question. Let me see if I can help. I spent a day or two snooping around, making some calls, and I couldn't find anything. So I called Dan back and I said, we have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is I can't help you. I can't answer that question. The good news is I think we identified an opportunity and we should go forward and figure this out. So we reached out to a couple of folks that are good friends, Naren at Amplify Publishing, Dan at Gotham Ghostwriters, Smith Publicity, and then we engaged Josh Burnoff to help us write this. So those are your sponsors of the survey. And to add to that, it takes a village, and Bill will get to this in a little bit. We talked to a lot of people. We talked to hundreds and hundreds of authors. And even though we have a pretty slick network, we needed to reach out to our network of friends to help us do that. So we reached out to probably a dozen other supporting sponsors, if you will. Everyone from, let's see, the Greenleaf Book Group, Jane Westman, Page 2 Publishing, Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches, and probably about a dozen others. I didn't mean to leave anybody out, but I want to get to the podcast instead of just thanking everyone. This took a village to get through. So anyway, let me hand it back to you, Bill, and give us what was the methodology that we used here? And then B, what were maybe the top 3 things that we
Yeah, so let's dive in with a couple things. As you said, this wound up being the largest nonfiction book study that we know of, in terms of understanding authors, revenue, expenses, experience. And that data wasn't collected anywhere, right? And so, as you said, it was an opportunity for data-driven thought leadership, the ability to answer questions that an audience that we deeply care about was asking, right? Or would be deeply interested in. And so to reach this audience, we had asked people who had written and published books And you can't simply go to a group like SurveyMonkey and say, hey, we'll pay a bunch of money. Can you poll some people for us and collect some data? No. It takes a village, as you said, to find people. We had over 350 authors respond. 301 had published a nonfiction book, and 2/3 had published multiple books. And so that was a fantastic response from the nonfiction and business book author community. And so I want to give a shout out to everyone who heard the call, leaned in, and sat down and took the survey, which wasn't a quick 3-minute, Likert scale 1 to 5 and you're done. We asked some deep questions. And in order to get meaningful data, we went deep. And the participants, those who completed the survey, spent over 20 to 30 minutes on the survey providing meaningful information. So there's a layer of gratitude, not only for the sponsors and the people who help amplify and reach out to their communities of authors, and then finally the authors who said, yes, this is worth my time.
Great. The investment that everybody made in time and energy is duly noted and greatly appreciated. Okay, so that being said, let's talk about what the top 3 or 4 takeaways were from the report. And everybody out there listening, again, you can go to authorroi.com and download the full report to read for yourself.
So let's go into a couple of the top line pieces. Number 1, good news, 64% of business books showed a gross profit. And the median profit for a book that had been out for at least 6 months was $11,350. But let's go a little bit further. Authors who invested in the book to make it more successful through things like a strategy, launch PR, and ghostwriting, all of those activities were correlated with increased profitability. And so on the revenue to strategy correlation, books with a strong revenue strategy had a median gross profit of $96,000. So the question becomes, if you know what you're trying to accomplish with your book, you have a much better chance of accomplishing it with a clear strategy. And if your goal is financial, you need a clear strategy to be able to elevate those returns.
So it was great to hear this return number that people got that invested in the strategy. Selfishly speaking, for you and I, Bill, right? Like, given that that's how we spend most of our days developing strategies for people that are writing books or are thinking about writing books, that was really important to hear. I think it's also equally important to realize that the magic formula, there is no magic formula here, but if it was, is not something as simple as number of units sold times some gross profit margin per unit that varies whether you go hybrid or self or traditional. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.